Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try and stay motivated, you find it impossible to focus on a hard task for longer than about 10 minutes? I felt the exact same way too, until I discovered a simple way to trick my brain into staying focused on hard things. And I call it the dopamine list. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the dopamine list with a quick hack that makes it easy to focus on difficult things without sacrificing your happiness. I'll also show you the easy way to turn focusing into a fun little game so that you can stay motivated even when you don't feel like it.
But first, let me show you a simple trick to set up your dopamine list that's going to make focusing feel as easy as running a marathon with jet engines strapped to your feet. Wait, what?
So, what is this one simple trick? Well, what if I told you that there's only really one thing you need to do if you want to trick your brain into getting motivated? And I first realized what this simple thing was after I first started university, because I was running into a huge problem that I felt like nobody had really warned me about. The thing is, for the first time in my life, I went from having my days completely planned out for me to being left to my own devices and having loads of free time to do whatever I wanted with. This sounds great, right? The problem was I wasn't actually using any of this free time with purpose or intention. I'd wake up with big plans of what I wanted to do and accomplish, but I'd get sidetracked, distracted, and just lose focus. But one day, when I started to feel like I was going to be stuck in this cycle of procrastination forever, I realized what this problem actually was. And it's probably not what you're thinking. Because when it came to the end of the day and my head would hit the pillow, I'd realized that I couldn't actually remember anything I'd done in the day. But I realized that this was all because I didn't actually know what was important to focus on. So how do I use the dopamine list to keep track of the important things that I want to focus on in my life so that I can actually motivate myself to stay consistent with doing hard things? You'll see that each time I have something difficult that I need to focus on, whether that's an essay, a video script, or writing my weekly newspaper, link down in the description, I'll write that at the top of the page in my little pocket notebook next to the current date. I discovered that there's two huge reasons why just the simple act of writing down the important thing you want to focus on is so powerful at tricking your brain into staying motivated and focused. And the first reason is all to do with your attention span. I mean, think about this. Have you ever been in a situation where you lose internet, but you still have to complete your work because the deadline is at the end of that day? So if you're anything like me, when you don't have internet access and you're doing work, you enter this sort of extreme focus zone. Because at this point, you're not constantly checking emails or just being distracted by those random notifications that come through. By having just one thing to focus on your dopamine list at any one time, you're kind of mimicking this environment because you're reducing the amount of other distractions that can come in. And this is really powerful when you combine it with an analog tool like a little pocket notebook I've got here. But the second way this works is even more powerful in tricking your brain, and it works like this. By associating a pretty difficult task with your day, you're finding a new sense of purpose. And when it gets to the end of the day, you can actually remember what you've done. Even if you've made a tiny amount of progress, I found that it reduces that feeling of self-doubt. And you start to feel way more accomplished because you've realized that you can actually do difficult things. But even though this is an excellent start, I very quickly realized that I didn't have the motivation or the discipline to stick with this system in the long term. So I discovered that there's just one hack that you can apply to your dopamine list that's going to make focusing on hard tasks as addictive as those beautiful almond croissants from Pret. And it works like this. This is just outside of Buckingham Palace in Westminster. And this site marks the approximate finish of the London Marathon. But I bet you didn't know that in 2024, over 65,000 people ran this race, but only 63 of the people running the marathon were so-called elite runners. So that means that over 99% of these marathon runners were normal people. Just like me and you, Sally. I don't know who Sally is, I just wanted to catch a viewer off guard. But anyways, since a marathon is one of the hardest tests of endurance in the world, trust me, I'm training for one right now, oh my goodness gracious. What percentage of these normal people do you think actually completed the 2024 London Marathon? Do you think it was 42%? Is 63%? Or 94%. Well, I kind of lied to you there, because the actual answer is that over 98% of normal runners managed to complete the 2024 London Marathon. But what do you think is the simple reason loads of these people were able to stay focused to complete this super hard task? Well, it's all to do with science, and understanding it is going to transform the way you look at focusing forever. And it works like this. When you're running a marathon, the finish line, the cheat meal, the sparkly medal, the adoration and love from your friends and family act as the rewards that you get after running the 26.2 miles. You see, our brain works best when we have something to look forward to at the end of a hard task, whether that's a marathon, an essay, or any sort of project you've got going on. And when your brain anticipates that reward, it releases a chemical called dopamine, which is essentially what gives you the motivation to keep going when the going gets tough. So how did I use this dopamine hack to try and implement it in my own life? And this is going to work even if your goal isn't running a marathon. Well, you'll see here, all I do on my dopamine list is break my big task down into smaller steps that I call my sort of focus blocks. So if I'm writing a script for a video, I might just write down that I want to write the first paragraph. And then after that, I'll write down a reward so that I can trick my brain into staying motivated by releasing that dopamine and anticipating that reward. Now, the reward could be something really basic, like another coffee if I'm working from a coffee shop, or something as simple as taking a walk outside. But whatever you choose as a reward, it's absolutely crucial that you follow this next step. Because if you don't, you're never going to be able to get back to focusing on the hard task after you've had your reward, and you'll be stuck in that cycle of procrastination forever. So if you've ever worked on a project before, or really ever had any task to do, you've probably been given a deadline. But there always seems to be one huge problem that I run into when I'm working with a deadline, and I'm really curious to see if you have the same problem too. Take the script for this video, for example. I've had a week to write it, yet there I was, sat on my train with less than 30 minutes to go until I reached my destination, and I still had this entire chunk of my script left to write. And if you've ever been in this situation before, you'll know exactly how frustrating that feeling is. Wondering why you can't be a little bit more proactive, stop procrastinating, and take a little bit of responsibility in your life. For goodness sake, Ollie, man, what are you doing? You're falling apart. Deep breath. But I realized the reason why this is such a common problem. And the craziest thing is, it's not actually your fault that you're always working up until this deadline. It's actually all to do with Albert Einstein. Well, kind of. You see, Albert Einstein died in 1955, but this year is also remarkable because of somebody you probably never heard of, called C. Northcote Parkinson. And basically, Parkinson came up with this pretty revolutionary idea he called Parkinson's Law. Maybe I'm missing something here and I should have called this the Stanleyland list. Anyways, Parkinson's Law essentially said that the work you have expands to fill the time you give it. In practicality, all this means is that if you have 4 weeks to do a task, the chances are, if you're like 99% of other people in the world, you'll fill your time with lots of sort of unnecessary tasks to make the project last 4 weeks. But there's a simple trick that I've been using in my dopamine list to exploit Parkinson's Law. Sorry, mate. And doing so has allowed me to stay focused on every single task I have. Here's how it works. So what I'll do is I'll give myself these things called artificial deadlines. And this tricks my brain by creating a sort of false sense of urgency. What this means is, if we take a look at my dopamine list, I'll set a timer for 40 minutes for each focus block, and then 10 minutes for each reward that I give myself. Whilst you might have come across a similar version of this technique before, called the Pomodoro technique, there's one thing that I do in my dopamine list that makes my technique way more effective. When I first started it, it sounded almost too simple to work, but I think that's one of the reasons why it's actually so powerful and effective. So all I'll do is, after each time I complete one of my tasks, I'll take out a colorful highlighter and immediately cross off what I've just done. There's no real color scheme here, it's just whatever I think looks pretty. The simple act of constantly crossing things off reminds myself that I can't actually do hard things, and it removes all of that self-doubt. Wow, if you're anything like me, we get all the time. But if you want to take this technique to the next level and really build consistent focus, what you can do is keep all of your dopamine lists in one place, and maybe one of these little pocket notebooks. And then you can track your progress over time and see how many of these little 50-minute sort of total blocks you can actually complete in one day. It turns the whole dopamine list into a little game, and you can try and see if you can beat your record. But there's one more, even more powerful way you can stay focused and build unstoppable consistency that I've not even told you about yet. And ever since I've started to use this pretty simple system, my life has completely changed, and I'm so confident that it'll change your life too. But because it's so powerful, I've gone ahead and made an entire deep dive on the system. So if you want to change your life by building unstoppable consistency and focus, you're going to want to watch this video here. So I'll see you all there.
Unbelievable. Do you know how much a new pair of shoes costs these days? Oh my goodness.